This episode is brought to you by Ryan Holiday and his inspirational quote, "The obstacle is the way."
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, my people.
Hello, my people. ¿Cómo están, damas y caballeros? Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. What an episode. What an episode 75 with Johnny Waite, coach, speaker, race director. Johnny has directed hundreds of races, obstacle, ultramarathon, survival, adventure, paddle, etc. around the world, as well as having competed in them. He calls it living a lifetime of adventures of a lifetime. How about that? His website is incredible. lifeadventurecompany.com. Go there. Follow Johnny also on Instagram, because you have no idea what this guy's going through. He's going all around the world to lead retreats, to lead races, to lead incredible adventures. Pardon my cough. But how did we get here? Oh yeah, Johnny's Instagram, participant_ribbon. Everything will be in the show notes, but how did Johnny get here? Well, in 2008, he had a complete life reset. He crashed and burned and reinvented. I don't want to say anything else because it's just, everything is in the episode. Life-changing. It came at the right time. It's January 2023, and I think all of us are still thinking about our New Year's resolutions, who we want to be, who we want to become in the process. Some of us are maybe doubting the New Year's resolutions that we picked, if any. So I really, really, really believe that this episode will be instrumental, especially if you're going through life changes as well, or career changes. Please enjoy Johnny Waite, lifeadventurecompany.com. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast. I have here the unbreakable, the unmistakable, the highly capable Johnny Waite. Johnny, thank you so much for being here. Super excited to meet you. Our good friend Enrique introduced us. We call him Obama in our circle of friends. And thank you for being here. It means a lot, man.
I'm very, very glad to be here, man. When Enrique told me you wanted to talk, and I looked at who you are and what you do, I was like, boom, I'm with this guy. This is good.
We have a lot of things in common, and not just ways of looking at life, not just the landmark curriculum, which actually Enrique introduced me to. That's how you met Enrique, but you've created a life that you want to live.
Very much so.
In many ways, that was what drew me to you. I went on your website, obviously, lifeadventurecompany.com, which people can access on the show notes. I loved everything I saw there. And one of the things that drew me to your life adventure, I would say, is that in 2008, you had a complete life reset. In many ways, you crashed and burned and reinvented. Yep. What happened that led you to say, so what happened and why did you decide to change your life exponentially in such a way that now you lead retreats in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and South America? You've directed hundreds of races, ultra marathons, obstacle races, adventure paddle around the world, and you've competed in some of them as well. In other words, you do what you love, and you are the dad that you want to be, and you create a life worth living. What happened in 2008 that you had to reset?
So it's funny. I was revisiting this story recently because you can tell the story from all different angles, right? And that's actually something I talk a lot about in my coaching, the idea about alternative narratives. And when we're telling a story, I think it's really important that we look at the narrative that's the most empowering for us. Don't change any of the facts. Don't, nothing is dishonest. But, we can tell the same story many different ways, some of which make us into a victim, some of which make us into a hero, some of which empower other people. And so it's funny, I was thinking about this story recently. So bare bones facts, I'd had a wonderful life, raised in a great family, had lots of opportunity. I was a successful realtor, married, had big house, great kids. Everything was going wonderfully.
And you grew up, born and raised in Canada?
Yep, born and raised in Orillia, Ontario, Canada, and traveled a bit, and I ended up back there to build my business, and really had it all. Was living that picture perfect life. And 2006, I was kind of on top of the world in my business. Was nominated Business Leader of the Year, Citizen of the Year, all these different things, and I got recruited to run for office. Wow! It was to run for MP. And it was at a time when I thought I could make a difference. And so 2006, I was approached for that. Talked with my wife, talked with my parents, talked with some friends, and we all decided this made a lot of sense. So early 2007, I got the nomination to run for MP in Simcoe North, and proceeded to spend the entire year campaigning, kissing babies, shaking hands, going to factory openings, 90th birthdays, all those things that you do. And a couple of funny things there. So my good friend was my opponent. Bruce Stanton was the incumbent. I was running against him. Love Bruce Stanton. Great, great guy. He went on to do a long career. But it was a minority government. It was when, every week we were about to see the government fall and there's going to be an election. So, you can't delay. You got to make the signs. You got to get everything done. So I had a whole campaign in the box ready to go. And there was never an election that year. It just kept, the government kept renewing, passing non-confidence motions. And by the end of that year, it was obvious, A, there wasn't going to be an election anytime soon. It was also obvious that, B, when there was an election, I was going to lose because Bruce had become a much stronger candidate in the meantime. And it was a really, really, and the other thing that had become obvious to me during that time of practicing as a politician was realizing how much it was going to require me to sell out who I was and what I wanted to do. And I'm not saying that as a negative connotation on all politicians, but just who I was going to have to change so much to be effective in that role. And so at the end of the year, I decided I was going to resign. Had spent a ton of personal money on the campaign, had brought in almost no income because as a realtor, clearly I wasn't focused on real estate, and had very much reset my finances negatively. And at the end of that year, I had a conversation with my then wife about what we're going to do next. In some ways it's a disaster. We're financially right back to scratch after all this success, all these years, but we had the opportunity to do absolutely whatever we wanted. And the unbelievably great result of that seemed so negative at the time is for the first time in many years, we had a really, really clear conversation about what we each wanted. And it was completely different. We loved each other. We'd never fought. We absolutely to this day think the world of each other. And what I wanted and what I saw the opportunity for was a gigantic life of adventure and nonconformity and just going and recreating from scratch this huge, enormous life. And what she wanted was, hey, I want to have some comfort and some security and family around me, to be in one place that it isn't constantly moving. And none of it was bad. Like nothing that she wanted. It wasn't, lavish and it wasn't boring. It was great. She wanted a nice house in the country with dogs and a Christmas tree up every year. And it became obvious that either one of us didn't get the life we wanted at all, or we would both compromise so much for so long that at the end of our life, we look back and nobody'd get it. And so we had a really interesting 2008, the year after the campaigning, of unraveling a really great life together so that we could both have an even better life apart. And it's funny, when I talk to friends who are going through separations, and it's almost always driven by acrimony, right? There's almost always a conflict that drives it. And that never happened for us. We to this day love each other as much as we ever have. We just realized that, wow, we want different things. Now, many years later, I have this crazy, huge life adventure, a wonderful wife that loves doing it all with me, who is a big fan of my first wife and vice versa. And my first wife, Karen, has a great, phenomenal guy named Shane, who I just love to death. He's the best stepdad to my kids. I sent him a Father's Day card. He's like just such a great guy. And they have an amazing, amazing life. 6 acres in the country, beautiful log home, dogs all around.
Yeah.
And so at that time, I had this opportunity with a bit of a clean slate to say, what's next for me? So 2009, I'm literally living in my truck. I had no money. We had really gone from a big house, lots of success, lots of trappings of all these things, to having to create 2 households. We could only afford one, so I made sure that money went to create hers. Didn't support her nearly as well as I should have based on what I'd been doing before, but far more than I could afford to at the time. And so over the next couple of years, we both really reset, developed new lives. I got into running, which led to racing, which led to obstacle racing, which led to survival racing, which led to death racing, which led to all these crazy multi-day events. And that led to being offered a job with Spartan Race, being their international quality manager, which was supposed to be kind of a contract gig, go to a couple of countries, help them set up new race companies under the Spartan brand. Very quickly, that was the end of 2012. So 2009 ran a marathon, 2010 ran a Spartan race, 2011 did the death race, 2012 did a couple of death races, and at the end of 2012, they asked me to come on as the quality manager. So going into 2013, I suddenly was traveling the world, was never around, actually shut my real estate. I'd already shut my real estate business down when I started running for office, but my just sales career, I also shut that down working for another broker and became a full-time race producer. And but the other thing that was happening at the same time, sorry, and it's funny, there's a bunch of different things coming together here.
Yeah.
I found over the last couple of years, I've gotten really interested in asking other people questions, which is your job now, and I love that. And on podcasts that I'm hosting, it's all about the other person. And when I'm in social settings now, I've stopped telling my own stories because I've heard them too many times. I think other people have heard them too many times too. So it's uncomfortable telling my own story, but I'm just going to finish it off quickly. That when I was a realtor, I'd started doing some coaching, and that came out of some of my landmark work and doing some coaching in the SELP, and I realized I was a good coach. So I got trained in coaching real estate, how to help people balance their life, work, career, but also how to be better at sales, how to be better at providing customer service, how to be better at closing deals, things like that. So the coaching had evolved alongside everything else. So during that period of 2009 to 2012, when my real estate career had very much gone in the toilet because I'd established myself as a not very focused realtor because I was doing other things, I did more and more coaching, and it led to studying hypnotherapy and using that as a tool in my coaching. And it led to a broader life coaching model. Instead of just real estate, it was people in all walks of life. And I never did love the term life coaching because that always sounded to me like I know how to live and you don't. Listen to me. So I always modeled mine life adventure coaching because it was really, what's the adventure that you want your life to be, and how can we make that so? And so I always said adventure isn't always swinging off the side of a mountain. Adventure might be that you're going to go and create a craft business, and that's what you want to do. Or adventure might be that you want to engage as a phenomenal parent and be really, really fully invested in that. And not just be going through the motions. So whatever your life adventure is, I want to help you get that. So that
free to be, free to act.
Exactly, 100%, yeah. And so that was all evolving along the way. So once I became a race director, I was doing less coaching, more race directing, which really was the focus for 13, 14, 15. And it was crazy. Like suddenly I was all over the world. Like really, I think it was like 25 countries during that period, working with all different new licensees. And it was just so dynamic and so exciting. 2016 took a step back from that because it was just a lot. I needed a bit of time off. In the meantime, 2015, I'd gotten remarried to Andrea, who's my wife, who's absolutely wonderful. We met, we'd actually met very briefly in 2008. Just I had stayed at a resort and remembered she was this nice lady that owned this resort. 2015, early in the year, we'd actually Haliburton, Ontario. It's called
Nice.
the Bonnie View Inn. Amazing place. She is an absolute institution in Haliburton, and the Bonnie View Inn is it's like such a legendary Ontario resort. She's recently sold it, and so early 2015, we met online and recognized each other. Like, oh, hey, I remember you. And my first message to her was, hey, would love to date, would love to be friends. Don't take this seriously at all because I'm a rolling stone. I'm not going to be in any place anytime soon. So just don't invest emotionally in this. And sure enough, we were married by the end of the year. We'd climbed Mount Aconcagua down in Argentina.
Aconcagua, nice.
Yeah. And on the climb, we're spending so much time in this tent together, and we realized, wait, man, if we can do this, we can do anything as far as this much time together. So we got engaged on the way up and married at the bottom.
Wow.
And so that was by the end of that year. Yeah. So 2016, I spent in Haliburton, and I was coaching full time at that point. That was my whole business that year, and we still did some of our own adventures. But then I got back into race directing 2017, 18, 19. So during that time, I was coaching as well as race directing. Pandemic hits in 2020, focused on coaching. And now what we do mostly, she sold the resort recently. So what we do mostly is we organize travel retreats for people. We just got back from Dominican Republic, where we spent a week with 20 people, helping them design their life. And what we've really discovered is, I think what attracts people to us and what we're doing is how genuinely, truly stoked we are. Like we are really excited about life. And people say, I want that. I want to be excited about life. And the biggest thing that I work with people on is my life blew up and I started all over again. I don't recommend that model. People say, how can I have what you have? Well, you can live in your car for a year and then live in your office that you're not allowed to live in, but you do. I had this little tiny office. It was my hypnosis clinic in an old bank that had been divided into small offices. And I was not allowed to live in it, obviously, but I did. And it had a safe as part of my office. So my office was a small room with a couple of chairs and a desk, but also had a safe off the side that people always use as a closet. It was the exact right size to blow up a mattress in. And I built a couple of hanging shelves so I could put my clothes on those. I'd go and sleep in this safe and then come out in the morning, close the safe. Like very professional when I came back from the Y, where I'd showered and brushed my teeth and stuff to do my appointments through the day. But it's funny. When they covered that on a documentary they did for the death race on 16 by 9, the Global TV did, they played this very dramatic music about Johnny Waite. Then there's John Waite, had it all, and then he lost everything. Boom, crashing music. Suddenly he was living in his car, and like they changed the lighting so he looked sad, and it is a great story, the whole idea of riches to rags and starting all over, and there's nothing untrue about it being told that way. I really did live in my car. I really did lose it all. It really was quite tragic. I don't remember any of it that way. I remember being a fantastic adventure. I remember sitting in the park reading incredible books under the tree, thinking how rich I was without any money. One of my favorite nights ever was about 100 degrees Fahrenheit for all of our Canadian friends. And it was just way too hot, and my office was hot, and my car was hot, and I couldn't just drop in at somebody in their pool at midnight. So I decided I would go swimming at the beach, Moose Beach. And I've always said to people, when you're broke, there's so many free things you can do. Running is free, hiking in the woods is free, swimming in the lake is free. This is all free stuff, right? And it's funny, I run barefoot most of the time, so that's really free. I don't even need shoes. But so I went swimming out to this really shallow beach. And I was lying in the water, looking up at the sky and sort of meditating. My ears were under the water. My eyes were out. I was breathing, and I just kind of floating with my feet just touching the bottom to support myself. And I was saying how amazingly blessed I was at this moment to be here. Without a word of exaggeration, all of a sudden, over my head, fireworks started going off. And because my eyes were out of the water, I could see the reflection of the fireworks in the water. So I felt like I was in this crazy snow globe of fireworks. And the sound was very muffled because my ears were underwater, but there were literally physical fireworks going off. And some family had come down to the beach with some fireworks they'd had left over from Victoria Day or Canada Day or whatever, and were setting them off at midnight directly over me. And I had my own private show. And it went on maybe 10 minutes. I remember when it ended, I was so grateful. And I remember thinking, The whole world is missing out on this right now. All these people who feel bad for me, sleeping in my truck, sleeping in my office, whatever, they missed out on this. I got to experience this. And I remember coming out of the water and the family was apologizing. They said, "Oh my God, we didn't see it there." I said, "No, do not apologize to me. What a gift that was." And I've always held on to that as a really great memory of, you can be very, very happy living in a great big home. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with fancy cars. I'm not diminishing that kind of success, but that's not what makes you happy. You can be happy while you have that, but it's not what's going to make you happy. So if you're not happy now and you think, I will be happy when I have these things, you won't be, because you'll be the same person who will be unhappy about something else. And you'll be even more unhappy. Jim Carrey has a great thing where he says, I wish everyone all the success and happiness I've had, only so they can find out that the happiness and success aren't related. I was at my least happy when, right? So I'm not saying that I was unhappy when I had all that stuff, but it wasn't the source of my happiness. And when I didn't have any of that stuff, I was still happy. And that wasn't the source of my happiness. In fact, I had a friend at the time. Ironically, this friend has since passed away in very unhappy circumstances. And I remember him saying to me, "Dude, you cannot tell me you're happy. You are broke, you're divorced, you're homeless. You're so full of shit if you tell me that you're happy right now." And I said, "Dude, I'm already broke, I'm already divorced, I'm already homeless. Why would I want to add unhappy to that list?" Right? And I really meant it at the time. Like, you can be happy anyway. And that's a big part of the coaching we just did last week. It was, let's set all of your circumstances aside. Let's set all that aside. We're going to come back to that. We're going to come back to problem solving and creating a new future, everything else. Let's set all of your circumstances aside and decide what could make you happy anyway. Not contingent upon, I'd be happy if, or I'll be happy when. What can make you happy now? And let's work on those things so that you can take that good positive energy and harness that to all of your goals and your plans and all these things to create the life that you want. Because if you try and create that out of unhappiness, create that out of misery, create that out of I will be happy when, you really won't be, because you're that same person all the way along. I always say it's like a Trojan horse. That's how I felt like I was going to be in politics. I was going to be this Trojan horse trying to pretend that I was noble and idealistic, but I'd have to play the game to get to where I could actually make a difference. And by the time you get there, you're not. You've sold out, right? And so we think we have this Trojan horse that once I get to success and money and fame, I will jump out and be happy. Well, no, because you're the Trojan horse that you're stuck in. You're not going to jump out and be happy.
Absolutely.
So sorry, that was a quite the free association, but that takes me to today, where I have a spectacular relationship with my kids all the way along. They've been key in everything. Coaching wrestling was actually the I would say my lifeline back in the day when I kind of felt like I was adrift and I didn't really have an anchor at the time. I always coached youth wrestling and my kids were on the team. And so I always felt that I was making a contribution there. And that was always something I could hang on to. And and I'm still in touch with so many of the kids that I coached over the years. But now, all these years later, when I have it all again. We have a wonderful home on the river in Minden, Ontario. We paddle year round because the river stays open here. We travel literally all over the world all the time. Like, we're home for a week and then we're off to the Philippines to go sailing and diving for 3 weeks. And then we get home for a week and then we're going to the Rockies for 3 weeks to snowboard and ski and live in our trailer from big mountain to big mountain to big mountain. And then we're home for a couple of weeks. Then we go to Europe to, I'm emceeing a wedding over in Germany and we're going to go visit some friends over there. But it's all part and parcel with this life of adventure that we've created, where when I'm in the Philippines, we're actually scouting this so that next year we can bring a group back to do the exact same trip. It's a week of sailing on a 74-foot wooden boat like you'd see in Moana, going from island to island, sleeping in these little huts on the islands. You literally jump off the boat with your dry bag, swim in with that as your flotation, open it up and have all your stuff for the night, and then go back to the boat in the morning. And, and then a week on mopeds before that, just bombing around the Palawan Island to see. So everything we do is A, what we want to do, but also B, it is in order to then create amazing opportunities for other people. And that's what we've discovered our real mission in life is to help people find their stoke. And it doesn't mean you have to do what I do, but it means you have to do what you want to do. And it was awesome with these 20 people last week to realize how different they all were and the different things they wanted. But the key is, every single one of them, I said, you have to get stoked. You have to get stoked, because At the end of your life, you're going to look back and think, did I live it? Did I really grab it and live it? And it doesn't mean you have to change everything that you're doing, because some people have circumstances that they can't change. We talked a lot about that. The whole serenity prayer, give me the strength to change what I can, the serenity to accept what I can't, the wisdom to know the difference. If you can't change your circumstances, get stoked about them, no matter what they are. Because if you're there anyway, people say, if only, and I just wish all the time. If only I wasn't stuck here, I'd be happy. Are you stuck there? Yep. Well, then stop saying that, because if you can't change it, you have to embrace it. If you can change it, I'll help you change it. Absolutely. That's great. If you can't change it, I will help you reframe it, because if you really, truly can't change your circumstances and you decide that that's the reason you're going to be unhappy, you're going to be unhappy, and you're going to come to the end of your life and you're going to have been unhappy, as opposed to, I have to do this. This is the lot I've been given. This is the cross I have to bear, the millstone around my neck, whatever it is. Then own it, grab it, love it, because if you really, truly, truly can't change it, then you'd better embrace it. And then the other part of that, free association, we did an exercise where I said, before we design your perfect life, there's a day set aside to designing your perfect life. Let's get real clear on the box, the reality check. Let's get real clear on the box that's in. So one woman that we're with has a daughter with some intellectual disabilities, who's the sweetest, most amazing kid in the world, right? So not to say that is in any way a negative, but that is certainly a parameter, right? Yeah. That's going to require her to put more focus on that for many more years than she otherwise might. So you get clear on that, right? And if somebody has, one woman had diabetes, so she's going to have to manage this. Absolutely. So you look at all the things that, when I later on say, you can do anything, when you would say, well, Johnny, I can't because, well, let's use that when we're building this perfect life. So this perfect life already accounts for any of the things that you might see as limiting factors. So everyone made their list, and they were good lists. They weren't particularly long lists. It was, well, this is the thing, my elderly parents or my finance, whatever. These are the things that, okay, we're going to take that into account. And then I said, so how many of you wrote down, I can see? And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, this is a group that doesn't have any blind people. Some of my groups will, I'm sure. This one doesn't. But did any of you put down as one of my limiting factors, I have vision? You all walked in here under your own steam. Did anyone write down one of my limiting factors is that I can walk? Like if you're in a wheelchair, you'd say, I can't walk. I get that. But isn't it crazy that we take for granted the things we can do? Because when you're designing this perfect life and the parameters, maybe you should consider, well, I have intelligence. I can think things through. I am physically capable. I can walk. I can see. I can hear. Put these on your list because they matter. And imagine how much you would trade to be able to do that. We don't have to trade anything. You already have it. So it has enormous value. And once you make that list, and I actually made them take 20 minutes to write this list, and you see after 5 minutes, everyone stops. You say, don't stop. Keep going. Like there's other stuff you're taking for granted, friends, enjoyment of music. Like what are the other things that really, truly bring you joy and really, truly add to your life that you're not putting on your list right now? And it's awesome when you can change your focus and really start to think about what are the things that I have been taking for granted that are actually quite incredible. It's unreal how much enthusiasm and gratitude and love you can generate from things that you didn't have to do anything for. They're already there. Yeah. So it's funny. It's a guy named Anthony DeMello, who's a wonderful philosopher writer. He's actually a Jesuit priest, but his stuff has much more of a Buddhist bent to it. But he says the only way it's possible to not be experiencing bliss right now is to be focusing on what you don't have. Because if you're focusing on what you do have, you're going to be blissful. But we're taught to focus on what we don't have, and we're taught to always feel like we're in deficit. When you wake up in the morning and you say to somebody, how's it going? They go, I need some coffee. I love coffee. I drink so much coffee. I adore it, but I don't need it. It's a benefit. I'm even in more surplus.
It's a surplus.
Right? And so we wake up and we're trained by society to feel like we're in deficit. I need more sleep. I need coffee. I need to go to work. I need. Yeah. And none of it's need. If you didn't do anything today, you would be alive tonight. The only thing you need is air. You could drink zero water. You could eat zero food. You could see zero people. And tonight you would be alive. Right?
I heard a quote. I heard a quote that says, "Desire is a contract that you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want."
Absolutely.
And
Yeah. Isn't that true? Yeah.
and I totally agree with you where you will you will defer the finish line. I'll be happy when, in my
Hmm.
case, like I'm a comedian, when I make it to Netflix. But once
Yeah,
you make it
sure.
to Netflix, you want another thing and another thing and
Yeah.
another thing. So so in many ways, very similar to you, where the 2008 story in 2017, I quit my bank job. That, as many people have heard here on the podcast, a very nice, juicy, paying bank
Hmm.
job where I was living large downtown, condo, traveling, good money, no mortgage, single, or I wasn't married with my
Hmm.
girlfriend, now wife, no kids,
Yep.
and I quit to pursue my career in comedy, and it went from six figures to no figures.
Yeah. Yeah.
but in many ways, I was so excited, stoked of
Yeah.
this, and people were like, oh, obviously there were some consequences that weren't that nice, where I couldn't visit my family as much because I didn't have, or I just had savings. I couldn't like go out and party and drink and whatever, but I was okay with that because
Sure.
it felt like I was creating so much space for things that I wanted to pursue. Now, the one thing that I learned, to echo your insights, is that I was or the story I told myself at the time was that I was miserable at the bank, even though it was a great school for me, and I'm very grateful for the education that I got from my parents, and
Sure.
obviously the experiences I got at the bank. It got to a point where I was too stressed,
Yep.
and I thought that when I made that money, I would have everything. But when I had that money, I was like the most stressed and miserable. But I thought that when I quit and do comedy, I'll be happy.
Sure.
But what I discovered is that once I quit and did comedy, I was still responsible for my happiness. I still had to go chase it, and
Exactly.
have that well-being. And I like Tony Robbins says, a life of achievement without fulfillment is a very sad life.
True
So
story.
you have to, from somebody who's derived so much happiness from achievement, from getting promoted. I was one of the youngest senior managers at Scotiabank, and or like, I don't know, getting a bonus, or like
Yep.
traveling, all these cheap, or graduating university or whatever, these, but you can't depend on these highs because you're just going to go back to the average that you are during your regular life. So when I quit, I thought that I very quickly realized that I still had to be responsible. Now, luckily, I was so stoked and vibrating like amazing vibes of this. I also quit the bank with my best friend and business partner, Huang, who's also a good
Yeah.
friend of Enrique. We both quit at the same time. And it was so much adventure and traveling and failing forward and doing shows and learning from others. And we started this public speaking and comedy school that we still have. And so I didn't want to fail in this.
Yep.
Failure is a subjective word, because I knew that just not trying would be failure. So
For sure.
even if it didn't work out, I was still going to be successful in this. But because I was so committed and not attached in landmark terms
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
result, that I embarked on this personal growth journey where I started reading Tony Robbins and all these books. I went on this journey where I started to research and learn from high performers and people who have achieved extraordinary things in their lives, so that I could copy that blueprint and apply it to my life, because it's all the same. Being successful
Sure.
in comedy or engineering or banking or ultra marathons, it's all the same. It's accountability, it's integrity.
Yep.
And you can apply that. So I got that, and it helped me in my journey to stay the path, be patient, be accountable
Yep.
to myself, integrity, consistency, discipline, all these things, to the point that now it's going to be 6 years in April. And I'm still here. I never went to the bank, so I never went back, which wouldn't have been a failure. But to me, the success is that I am living a life that is authentic to me, and I'm empowering others, because hundreds of students have come through my school, and they, very similar to you, they want, it's not that they want my life, but they just want, I don't know if it's the courage to jump or get pushed and embark on this journey of living a life that feels authentic to them. And I wanted to ask you if you can give any advice to people who want to have these life-altering conversations, such as the one that you had with your then wife back in 2007 and 8. Because that conversation is not necessarily a divorce conversation. Maybe it's a quitting your job conversation, or maybe it's a, I want another opportunity in my work. Maybe it's I want to tell my parents that I'm gay. Maybe it's I want to tell my wife that I don't want to be a parent, or that I want another kid. So anything that you can advise people to act courageously and have these life-altering conversations?
100%. I'm going to say two quick things first, the second of which leads directly into that. So the first one is back to our whole I'll be happy when. Just put the word still. I will still be happy when. That's all you have to do. Isn't that amazing? And then it reinforces that I'm happy now and I'll still be happy when. So not to think that happiness is out there somewhere. It's in you. So get happy and then still be happy. The second one is, I had a friend years ago who was a successful realtor, felt he needed some change, needed some adventure, convinced his wife and his son that they should buy a 40-foot sailboat. They'd never sailed. They should learn how to sail, and they should sail down to the Caribbean from Ontario and spend a couple of years down there. And sold everything, bought this boat, sailed down. It was a 6 months adventure in a year of learning to sail the boat while he still sold real estate. Then they sailed down all down the coast, got down to Bahamas, spent Christmas there. And in New Year's, his son said, "Dad, I really want to go home. I miss skiing. I miss my friends." And he called me and he said, "I just feel like such a failure if I quit now." I said, "Dude, there's no failure in anything you've done. This is incredible. You just did something nobody does. It's amazing. And the great thing is you now also get an opportunity to be an awesome dad." So it ties back into those conversations and the idea that you can jump, and it doesn't actually, because he then came back and is, again, a very successful realtor, enjoys his career even more because he has this thing that he did that he's so proud of and knows he can go do amazing things anytime. And so he didn't blow up his world necessarily. He changed everything. But I always say it's very easy to step back into the TikTok. The TikTok isn't going anywhere. It's going to be there. You can go do. So you could go, and if you did try comedy and it didn't work, and suddenly 2 years later you had to go back to the bank, go back to the bank. It's still there, right? Now, fortunately, you were able to persevere and get it to the point where you've built, this business that's comedy, coaching, podcasting, all these things.
It's who you become in the process.
100%. And the bank is still there. So you're not going back. You're loving your life. But if you did go back, you're still going back as a bigger, broader, more vibrant Stephan. Right? So that comes back to those conversations. How did he have that conversation with his wife? How do you have the conversation with your parents about difficult things? How do you have a conversation with a friend about something really challenging? And something that I've come up with over the years that I think is really, really key. And, nothing that any of us say is the first time it's been said. So, I don't think I've invented anything in my coaching. It's all just taking the best of other things I've read and repackaging it and reframing it. But this is something that I don't know where I read it. I do think it's an amalgam of a bunch of different ideas that I put together into this novel presentation of it. But I always say to people, whenever you have a difficult conversation, whatever is the impediment to that conversation is also the access to that conversation. There's a reason you're not having a conversation. You're stuck. I can't have it because why? I can't have it because I'm afraid my friends are going to reject me. I can't have it because I'm afraid I'm going to anger my mom. I can't have it because I'm afraid. And
the obstacle is the way.
The obstacle is the way. Ryan Holiday, one of my favorites. But the impediment to a difficult conversation is the access to that conversation. So I wanted to give you an example of where I first really worked through that. And it was actually while I was coaching SALP, so back to some landmark stuff, a great participant was organizing a fundraiser. She, a straight girl, lived with two gay men, and they were her best friends, and she wanted to do something to support their community. And so it was an AIDS fundraiser that she was doing. And she said to me, this was a project she was doing for the SALP, and she said to me, I'm really, really worried. There's a DJ that we've contracted to do the event. And I suddenly realized, I think he thinks he's getting paid and we can't afford to pay him. There's no budget for it. I said, well, you have to have a conversation. She said, I can't, because we cannot afford to lose him. I said, okay, great. You can't afford to lose him. Tell him you can't afford to lose him. Have the conversation. No, but I can't, because I think it's on me. I think I'm the one who should have communicated that. I don't think I did. I said, okay, so it's on you. You should have communicated it. So what we eventually came to was this: how the conversation went. I'm going to say his name was Jim. Hey, Jim, I need to have a really tricky conversation with you, because we're so excited that you're the DJ for this event, and it really does hinge on you. You're the selling feature of this event. And I think I may have really screwed up in my communication with you, because every other person involved with the event is doing it for free, because we really don't have any budget to pay anybody. And if you're expecting to be paid, that's my fault, and I need to address that, need to figure that out. And in the end, he wasn't expecting to be paid. He said, no, I always knew I was getting paid.
Oh, wow.
But no matter what the situation was, she had to have that conversation with him. And so if somebody says, I really need to have a conversation with my mom, but I can't, because every time I have a conversation with my mom, I feel like a child. She makes me feel like a little kid, and I just get all bogged down, and then I leave feeling awful. Mom, I need to have a really tricky conversation with you. And I'm recognizing the reason I haven't had it is because for whatever reason, when we have a conversation, I end up feeling like a child. And I'm not saying it's you. I'm saying somehow I end up feeling like a child, and I don't want to feel that way. So I want to come into this conversation as two adults and then have the conversation. So whatever it is, if you're having a conversation with your boss about money and you think the problem is, I know that it's been a really tough year and they don't have a lot of budget, but I do need more money. Hey, I want to have a conversation about my compensation. And I want to start by saying, I recognize that it's a tough time for the company and that you're having to make difficult decisions. I'm also having to make some difficult decisions right now because my needs are such that I have to make a certain amount of money. So I want to have a conversation with you about what I can provide an extra value so that it makes sense for you to pay enough to keep me on. Because I'm not just asking you for money. I want to, so boom, whatever the impediment of the conversation is, use that to frame the conversation. It takes all of the sting and all of the fear and all of the ambush out of it, put it up front. And it works with anything. It really, really does work with anything.
In communication, I teach this speaking with confidence workshop, and in comedy and in speaking, there's this tool that we call point out the elephant in the room.
100%.
And basically, the big advantage of making evident what's already evident or pointing out the elephant in the room is that it diffuses the negative.
100%.
It's not going to go away, but by pointing it out, it diffuses it. So, for example, if I have a meeting with 20 people in my team, but I just fired 3 of them because we had to lay off 3 people for expenses, and I go into the meeting like nothing happened, everybody's thinking and everybody's like, it's tense. Yeah. But if I point it out, I mean, it's not gonna take away the fact that I just let him go or fired them. Yeah. But they will be able to pay attention, and the tension will be less. So I may say, good morning, everybody. I know that it's a very tense time because, as you may already know, we just had to let go of Maria, Andrew, and Johnny. And rest assured that that decision was not taken lightly. It was taken by management to control costs given the incoming recession. I want to assure you that there's no more scheduled layoffs, and I trust that we can still work together the remaining of the year to achieve our goals. Yeah, now, 100%. It's not going to change the fact that I had to fire them, but now they're going to be like, oh, okay, he mentioned it. Okay, now let's pay attention. But if you don't, so it diffuses it. So by pointing it out, it's great. And it also allows you to create space for solving the problem.
100%. And the other thing that's directly connected to that is this thing that is eating away at you that you're not having a conversation about is there. And you're not having a conversation about it doesn't make it go away either. And so if it's as difficult as you think it's going to be, it's kind of like jumping into cold water. If you have to get in, because it's not getting any warmer, right? And I love the expression, don't suffer twice, or don't suffer longer than you have to. Like, deal with it. And if it's really bad, deal with the really bad. 8 times out of 10, it's not nearly as bad as you thought. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, good, it's been dealt with. But, I always remind people, this conversation that you have decided you need to have, and you don't need to have every conversation. I'm not saying that either. Like, some things is like, yeah, I'm not going to deal with that. I'm going to keep that to myself, or I'm just going to let that go. Right? Like, I'm not saying every single thing needs to be addressed, but something that does need to be addressed, once you decide it needs to be addressed, the sooner you address it responsibly, the better it's going to be, because it's still there. And years ago, this is funny. Years ago, I had a good friend who was asking me about hypnosis and it as a therapy. And he said, yeah, I could never do it. He said, I know that I have some things deep down here. I don't want them to ever come up. So I'm just never gonna do that. And I smiled and said, hey, dude, you know what? They're still there. Like, I'm not saying you need to share everything with me. I'm not saying, but these things that you know are so deep down, you don't want them to come up. They come up at some point somehow when you don't want them to. And so the thing that you're trying not to deal with, you're going to deal with it someday, right? It's like one of the participants at our retreat, a terrific guy. What he realized was that he has some very serious health issues that he knows he has, and he's avoiding appointments with the doctors because he doesn't want to deal with the diagnoses that are probably going to be pretty awful. And what he left with was with a peace of mind about, I'm going to make those appointments. I'm going to deal with whatever's coming. Because what he got clear on was he's going to deal with it anyway, right? Like, he's going to deal with late stage cancers and early stage cancer, as an example, if he doesn't go and find out what's going on. You're going to be dealing with way downstream effects rather than getting. So it's the same with anything. Like, whatever the thing that's eating away at you is, deal with it sooner, because later it's probably going to be worse. So that's the if I combine all that advice, and then the one other thing with it, and this is meta. Like, this is actually goes to my core philosophy. Yeah, is that all the things that we think matter so much, we make them matter. Like, what if I lose my job? What if you lose your job? What's it matter, right? And
adding meaning to it.
We add so much meaning to everything. There's that terrific Chinese proverb about the farmer, his horses break out, and his neighbors say, "Oh my God, that's so bad." He goes, "Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not." The next day they come back and they bring another wild horse with them. "Oh my God, you're so lucky you have this horse." Well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. His son's breaking the horse in, breaks his leg. "Oh my God, that's so too bad. Your son's broke his leg." Maybe not. Anyway, it goes on to the army comes, conscripts everyone, but his son doesn't go because he's broken his leg. You have no idea what any of this is going to lead to anyway. And even that, who knows if it's good or bad. So we buy in collectively to such a narrow frame of what things mean, what's good, what's bad, and then put all of our meaning into that and take everything so seriously. And in reality, maybe everything's going to blow up. And maybe that doesn't matter because you're going to do something else. Or maybe it's going to go really, really well. And that's not going to matter. Like, who knows? A, who knows where it's going to go in the first place? And B, who knows if that's even going to be great? And C, you can always make it great. So that's the one other thing is all this fear that we have about things not going the way they are supposed to. Spoiler alert, they're not going to. Everything's not going to go perfect no matter what. Own it, right?
Yes.
Dive in. Get into the mix. And I gave a speech years ago about the power of saying yes. And I always said that yes is the gas and no is the brakes. So it's not to say that you never say no. If you're careening off a step on those brakes, say no, take a break, get some space. But if you don't love where you are, standing on the brakes isn't going to get you anywhere. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So that's some positive energy. What do I love about where I am? Where can I take some joy and some good energy to then put that in the gas tank and say, okay, now I'm going to step in the gas and say yes to something, anything. And it will take you somewhere. Will it take you where you want to go? Maybe, maybe not, but it'll take you somewhere. And from there you say, well, now I think I want to go over there. Awesome. You're going to have to step in the gas, say yes to something, takes you over there. So in my own life, when I think back to running that marathon I wasn't a runner at the time at all. I just wanted to, it was kind of self-flagellation. It was like, I felt like I'd kind of pooped the bed in a lot of ways, and I thought I needed to go put myself through some pain. And, but I did
I
it.
run a lot. I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, for sure. And we can get into all that too. But then somebody said, hey, you should do this Spartan race. Yeah, I'll do that. And then somebody said, hey, you should do this death race. Yeah, I'll do that. And then somebody said, hey, you should go do this race in Nicaragua. Yeah, I'll do that. And it's funny, when I think about that race in Nicaragua, there I met a guy who I invited to come climbing with me in Argentina. And then through him, I met a guy who invited me to go rafting in the Grand Canyon. And when we went rafting in the Grand Canyon, through them, I met the people with whom I'm going to the Philippines on the sailing trip. And it's all just connecting the dots of yeses. I said yes to this, led to that, led to this, led to that. And sometimes you say something and it doesn't go the way you wanted it to. But then you'll say yes to something else. And at the end of your life, you're going to look back and see what is a strangely straight line of all these things that at the time felt like zigs and zags and ups and downs and all over the place. And I think the question you're going to ask yourself is, did I do things and did I love people? Because if you didn't do things, what were you here for? And if you didn't love people, you missed the whole point of everything. Yeah. So if I keep doing things and I keep loving people, and some of them go well and some of them go badly, and the ones that go badly usually turn to the ones that are even better later on. So let go of this idea that it has to go a certain way, because it could go any of a million ways, most of which are going to turn out perfectly fine in the end. So let go of that little steering wheel that you hold so tightly and try and move the whole universe the way you want it to go with this steering wheel.
Absolutely.
Let it
and
go.
Steve Jobs in his famous Stanford speech, he said, like, you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
100%.
So you have to trust that they'll connect and that it'll go well. But in many ways, to your point, if you don't pursue a life that is worth living or that feels authentic to who you are, the dots are still going to connect, but in things that you don't like, like I could see like so clearly my path in the bank, and it was a very successful path, but it wasn't my path. It was like so predictable that it would eat me alive. And I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be that director. I didn't want to be that VP. Or that, I mean, for my ego, it'd be cool. And for like, oh, he's the senior manager, he's the director, he's a VP, and like he's getting paid and traveling or whatever. But it's not me, you know? And the thing is, I'm very disciplined and high integrity, high energy, and high accountability. So I would have succeeded in any path that I picked, but that wasn't mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in that search, it's very important that you're honest with yourself, because it's so easy to just go along with life, and inertia will take you and momentum will take you, and then you're 70, 80 and you're like, what did I do? That's not even who I wanted to be. So I find that Chip Wilson in that interview on the Tim Ferriss podcast said, like, you have 10 great decisions in your life. And to me, that was definitely one of them in my life. It altered the trajectory of my life by far. Probably Landmark is another great decision, because it did affect the way that I think, that I act, and that I don't create stories as much anymore, which like the facts are empowering, free to be, free to act, and many things. But I find that the running, which is what I want to get into, it's like not a lot of people talk about this, but I feel that although I listen to podcasts a lot, which is me time of people that I admire and learn from, and I really value that time because I feel like I'm learning. Even though I'm listening to podcasts, I feel like it's deep meditation for me, where I get great ideas, and it allows me to also think to myself, this is coming up a lot. This is coming up a lot.
100%.
Sometimes things get solved in the race. I mean, in the run. Sometimes they don't, but it comes a lot. Ideas come a lot. And David Goggins says too that like the run will squeeze the bitterness out of you in many ways, like you, especially long runs. Right after this, I have to go run. I'm running 15 kilometers.
I get to go run.
I get to go run 15 kilometers. So it's incredible. What has running been for you, and was it a important instrument in becoming honest with yourself? Obviously, 100%. I know that it led to yeses and meaning like-minded individuals that have led to Life Adventure Company. But do you feel that the running has meditative powers in many ways? What has
Very much so.
Apart from the releasing endorphins, which I guess is tied with the meditative, what does it do for you? And how long? Marathon is 42.2, but what about the other races that you've done? Is it 100K, 150K?
Yeah. I remember the first time that I'd heard that somebody had run 50 miles, and I thought it was a typo, because I was like, well, no, you can't run 50 miles. The marathon's 26 miles. That's the furthest you can run. You can't run 50 miles. That doesn't make any sense. And then I got into this world where, people are running 100 miles, 200 miles, 500 miles, 1,000 miles, 3,000 miles.
There's 1,000 miles?
Oh yeah. There's these crazy, incredible races of distances. Now, obviously, you're not running 1,000 miles without stopping, but you're running it uninterrupted in that you're stopping to sleep and eat and then getting up and running again. There's actually a race called the Shir Chimnois Transcendence Run in New York City. That's a 3,000 mile race around a 1 mile loop. And so you're running it 3,000 times over the course of a couple of weeks, and absolutely mind-boggling. And I've never taken on that kind of distance, but I've run 100-milers, and I've run lots of overnight races, and I've done lots of endurance races that are not running per se. It's carrying a pack and doing challenges along the way, but that will go for 60, 70 hours without sleeping. And I find the most tremendous value in that, especially when you're by yourself, is that, and especially at night, is stuff comes up, your guard gets down, the things that you're so busy trying to keep from thinking about, you stop remembering to not think about them, and they pop up. And you think, oh, put that away. But you're still on that trail for 9 more hours tonight, and it's still dark, and it comes back. And in life, we can change the channel so easily. We can pick up our phone and look at something, or we can call somebody, or we can grab a book that we've been putting off, and we'll finally read that book because I don't want to deal with this other thought. So I'll read that book that I haven't been reading. We'll do anything to not deal with some of these things. But when you're running and you've already run 50 miles and suddenly it's night and you're hurting and you're in a different state, and it comes up and you think, oh shit, I guess we're doing this. Yeah. And oh my God, the huge value in that, and the things that I've worked through, and the
healing.
The healing, and also the self accountability and the self coaching, and the dealing with something that you suddenly realize, wow, I've spent a lot of time and energy putting this off, and now it's right here in front of me, and I'm seeing it from an entirely different perspective, because I am in a different state. Sometimes it's a weakened state. Sometimes it's like, I can't go another step, but I have to. And now I'm going to deal with this. And you're limping along and feeling miserable, but you're dealing with it. Other times it's an incredibly heightened, empowered state. You're in that flow of running, and you're 50, 60 miles in and think, I feel really good. This is crazy. I'm going to deal with this thing right now because I've got some power I sometimes don't have. So it's funny for me, running is about distance. Like, I'm not super fast. That's not true, actually. When I sprint, I'm actually really fast. But I mean, like, I'm not going to go out and win a 5K race. I'm not that guy at all.
Yeah, me neither.
But the further I run, and I'm not competitive, but the further I run, the more I feel like I'm in my groove, because I can generally run farther than most people. And so again, it's not about me versus anyone else, but it also, if I'm running a 5K at the park, you're never alone. You're always in a group of people. And for some people, that's what it's about. It's about community, and that's awesome. For me, it's when you're alone, and you're running in your head for a while. It's funny, you talk about listening to podcasts. I think if I was running, 5, 10K kind of thing, it'd be a great chance to listen to podcasts. Like, if I'm running 10K and say that's 45 minutes, whatever, and I can listen to a podcast. That's a really great use of time, because I'm probably not going to get into a deep pain cave of transcendental thought anyway, because again, I'm not running fast enough to put that on my body. But if I'm running through the night, a 50 mile or 100 mile or whatever, there's tremendous value for me in either running with nothing, or what I love to do is just put on some really cool instrumental music, because I don't want anyone's thoughts going into my head. But there's a band called Circles Around the Sun that has such great freestyle, jammy, jazzy, funky, cool stuff. And I put that on last time I ran the Halliburton Ultra. And it's funny, I signed up for the 100 miler months before it came up. And by the time it came up, I realized it'd be very selfish of me to do it. I'd been away all summer building races. I was finally home, and I was going to go take off for a couple of days to go, because a 100 miler isn't just the 24 hours it takes to run. It's also the couple of days after that you're beat up, and the night before that you're out there to be ready for a 6 o'clock start. And my wife at her resort had a wedding that night, and she really was short-staffed and really needed me to bartend. So I made an agreement with myself that what I would do is I would go for the race, because I'd signed up. I wouldn't not show up. And I decided I wanted to run it barefoot, like completely barefoot. And this is on some pretty rough terrain over in Halliburton. And I thought, I'm just going to see how far I can run barefoot and still be back in time to bartend that 7 o'clock wedding tonight. And the course is 25 miles out, 25 miles back, 25 miles out, 25 miles back. And I'd signed up for the 100 mile, and I knew full well I was not going to run 100 miles. So went out, slept in my car the night before, got up, started the race at 6 o'clock in the morning, running my bare feet. The sun comes up. Suddenly the ground's not so cold anymore. And this is in September, so the ground's pretty cold in the morning. And I was dealing with every sensation, cold feet, and then running through mud that was warming up in the sun, feeling the warmth of it and squishing through my toes, and some rocks and some grass, and really got very meditative. Like I'm running with this great funky music, and all of a sudden I'm looking at the trees and I'm realizing everything's breathing right now. It's not just me. I mean, the trees breathe. There's a bit of wind going. Everything's breathing. And I remember at one point I actually stopped and I thought, soak this in. Like, this is awesome that you're doing this right now. And some people stopped and said, are you okay? And I went, oh, I'm so much better than okay. Thanks. This is great. Anyway, so the last aid station is at 20 miles. And then you go out to the 25 mile mark and turn around and come back. And I saw somebody I knew at the 20 mile mark, waved, said hi. You draw some attention to when you're running in bare feet. Like, it's not like you're wearing barefoot shoes, you're running in bare feet, and people think that's pretty weird. So I ran, stopped, had a bit of hydration, some snacks, said hi, carried on, and looked at my watch and thought, yep, this would be where I turn around. So I got to about 21 miles and turned around, and I came back past that aid station, and they said, are you lost? Are you hurt? And I said, no, I'm just going back. They said, but you couldn't have got to the out and back by now. I said, oh no, I'm not going to do the 100 miles. I actually have to get home for dinner. And turned and then ran 21 miles back, tracing the steps all the way back. And that was such a good day, because it hit me with a couple of things. I got the experience of running that far barefoot. I hadn't run that far barefoot before that.
Wow.
I got the experience of all those sensations. I've led barefoot hikes at Wanderlust, where you take people and you say, this isn't just about toughness, my tough feet. It's about actually getting clear on when I walk. There's contact with the earth. It feels different on my heel than it does on my toe. What's happening with my arch in the middle? Is it flattening? Is it staying flexed? Am I going off my toe? Am I going off my heel? Do I find I have a preference for one kind of terrain? Like, I'm going to avoid this gravel because I like the grass, which is great when you have the choice of gravel or grass. But what about when you have to walk on gravel? Does that preference for grass help you at all at that moment, or is it a preference you have to let go of? And so there's all this that goes on when you're running barefoot. And back to the whole idea about what running does for me and why I love it. When I talk to people who say, I hate running, usually it's because they find it boring, right? I just find running boring. I say, okay, have you ever run on a trail? No. Go run on a trail. It's way, way more interesting than running on the road. I still found it boring. Go run on a trail barefoot. I promise you won't be bored. And then like, to the point where I'll say to someone, go run on a trail barefoot at night with just a headlamp, and all you can see is that one little spot in front of you. You can go run 5-10 hours at night on a trail barefoot. There's nothing boring about that. It is so incredibly engaging. And even as simple as, and it's not to knock road running. I have lots of great road running friends, and road running is awesome. The one thing I don't love about road running, at the end of a marathon, I'll feel unbelievably sore compared to an end of a 50 mile, twice the distance on a trail. And the reason is this: you're running on an engineered surface, usually in engineered shoes, and every single stride is going to be almost identical. right? That's the whole point. You get into a cadence and you just keep doing it. You just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it.
Such
if
a
I had a
good
metal
point.
coat hanger here, I'd do this. And eventually that metal coat hanger is going to heat up and break, right? And so your knee does this 26,000 times. Your ankle does this 26,000 times. On a flat surface, most people heel strike because it's just the way that we run. And when you heel strike, it puts so much unbelievable shearing force on your ankle, your knee, your hip. And that's why roadrunners get knee problems, back problems, all these problems. It's just massive, repetitive, pounding pain again and again and again. When you run on a trail, every single step is different. Every step is different. You know, one time you have to stand a little bit on the inside of your feet because you'd roll outside the other time. Another time you're scampering around a corner, you're going up a hill, you're
That's
going
such
down
a
a hill.
good point.
And then do that barefoot, and oh my God, it is such amazingly involved, present running that
I would love to do that. I've never done it. I would love it.
Well, you and I are going to meet up and do that because it honestly, that more than anything changed my life. It's funny. There's a great book, Born to Run, that was a gigantic bestseller years ago that so many people read. It's all about the barefoot runners from the Tarahumara tribe in Copper Canyon, Mexico. And the funny thing is, they actually don't run barefoot. They run in Harada is basically sandals, but it's a barefoot style of running. But I remember back then thinking, I really, really want to start barefoot running. That's amazing. And I remember at the time I had no money. And it was, as soon as I can afford some barefoot shoes, I'm going to start barefoot running. And one day I thought, what an asinine statement that is. When I can afford some barefoot shoes, I'll start barefoot running. And so that's actually how I started barefoot running, was I thought, I just actually want to go run barefoot. And so when you talk to barefoot runners, 90% of barefoot runners aren't barefoot runners. They run in sandals or run in Vibrams, the 5 fingers.
Yeah.
It's not to knock it. Absolutely awesome. Fantastic. But the idea of running barefoot, oh man, it is so awesome. Yeah. So
I would love to try that. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say with that is that you meet some unbelievably great people in the distance running community. There's great people in every community, and I'm not knocking the 5 and 10Ks, but I find when I go to a 5 and 10K down at the park, everyone's there, everyone's warming up, they're in their little pod, and they've got their watch on, and they've got their goal, and they've got their spandex, and they've got the shoes, and they're stretching, and it's awesome. But everyone is in their head. They're in their head, right? And they run. As soon as they're done, they look at their watch, they go, okay. And then they start comparing their times, what it was compared to their goal, and then they all go home, which is all great. None of that's a knock. But I don't find, for me and my makeup, that is a lot of connecting for me. Whereas if you go to a 100-mile run, you're generally there the night before and you're having dinner with these people, and nobody's talking about their goal time. Like, nobody's saying, my goal time tomorrow is 17 hours. My goal time is 26 hours.
Yeah, nobody.
You're asking what they do for a living. You're asking about their kids. You're asking about these things. And then you sleep in your car, you sleep in your tent, you sleep wherever, you go back to the hotel. Not many people do. You get up in the morning, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning. You're having a coffee and a bagel, and you're going down to the fire, and somebody's having a beer at the fire, and then the gun goes off, and it's like, oh, I should put my shoes on. Of course, the guy who's going to win that race, the one who's going to win that race, they're warmed up. They're at the front of the pack, but they're usually no more egotistical than anybody else. They're all just there to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And
I always say, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, at the end of it, people hang around because you're too tired to just jump in your car and drive home. And the community that I find forms around that, and the people that I've met from that community, I want to put a plug in for a racing company that I have nothing to do with. It's called Happy Trails Racing. It's based out of Milton, Ontario, Hamilton, Ontario, Burlington, Ontario, Dundas, Ontario, somewhere down there. It's called Happy Trails Racing. And they put on about 11 or 12 great events. Some of them are 100-milers. Some of them are indoor. Some of them are outdoor. They just do so many cool things. It's Jeff and Heather, and 2 of my favorite people I've met in the racing community. And they put on such amazing races. And the community around them, you never hear anything but positivity about Jeff and Heather, about their events, about the people they meet at those events. It, to me, really embodies everything about what trail racing should be.
I'm here on the website. I see them. HappyTrailsRacing.com.
Isn't that amazing? Amazing presentation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. My cousin is my marathon coach. Although I've never done like 5 halves, and I think in October I'll do my first marathon. But what I always say is that I don't know a single long distance runner who's broke or who isn't doing or who isn't high performing in what they're doing. And it may sound contradictory because for people, and I'm not knocking on anyone, obviously, but for people who don't do running, they might be like, oh, if you spend so much time doing that, you're going to have less time to invest on whatever you choose to high performing, like work or accounting or comedy or whatever. But I would argue that the planning of the running, because you have to block out time, and allows you to not just plan for that, but you become a good planner for everything else that for your money making endeavors or whatever for your job. And also in the running, you achieve so much mental clarity about everything in your life that you just become laser focused and executing on things at work, in your personal, professional life, in your finances and everything. It's like, I just don't know a single long distance or marathon runner or long distance runner who isn't successful in what they decide. Obviously, there may be some exceptions, obviously, but I do feel that it does benefit your life in ways that I can't put down on words.
Well, two things that tie directly into that. The one is there's a great expression that people should meditate for half an hour a day unless they don't have time, and then you should certainly meditate for an hour.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So if you don't have time to meditate for half an hour a day, meditate for an hour. And so making time for running is similar, right? You're right. You have to get better at your planning of your day to begin with. And that running becomes the meditation. And so it does give you the opportunity to work through things and get clarity and come back. And also that kind of energy expended. And that's where like a 5K run is brilliant. If you get up in the morning and drink your coffee and sit and read the news and then try and go to work and then try and grind through the morning and then suddenly it's noon and you haven't really gotten anything done. And I got to work twice hour this afternoon because I didn't get anything done this morning. As opposed to if you get up in the morning, hit brew on the coffee, go run a 5K, whether it takes you 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and you come in and you drink that coffee, and then you go sit at your desk, you're going to get stuff done. And then it's noon, and you've got so much done, and you're excited about the afternoon because you got a bunch done in the morning. Well, how'd you get all that done when you had half an hour less to work with? Because you got yourself jacked, moving, energized, also got something accomplished to start the day.
Yeah.
And there's gigantic biology about the idea of moving forward with light coming past your eyes as far as what it does for waking you up for the day, period, and getting your brain ready and firing on all cylinders. So
motion creates emotion.
100%. But here's and also the other thing is motion is lotion. Let's you're not nearly as stiff and sore through the day because you moved and you did stuff, right? So motion is motion and motion is lotion. But the other thing, and this comes back to the endurance. You said earlier that the same thing that you need to succeed in comedy is the same thing you need to succeed in business, the same thing you need to succeed in long distance running. And what it is stick-to-itiveness. There will be a time in every marathon, in every 100-mile race, in every endurance survival type race, where it makes a lot of sense to stop. And you start thinking, what am I even here for? This doesn't matter. What am I doing? And there will come a time in every business, in every comedy career, in every relationship where you think, you know what? I'm done. It'd be way easier to walk away right now. I don't need this. And you can think back on that time that you were out in the woods and you thought, you know what? I'll just keep going till the sun comes up. And I'll make a better decision when the sun comes up. I'll go for another hour. I can always take one more step, right? And then I always say, don't ever quit before you've talked to Bob, the big orange ball. And when Bob comes out, you go, Bob, hey, maybe I should keep going. I feel a lot better right now, right? And again, you have a bad night in comedy when you're getting started and you think this is awful. That's a really bad time to stop because it'd be a bad decision. I'm going to wait till Bob comes out. I'm going to wait till I go out and actually put on a good set. And maybe I can go out on a good note. Well, you don't want to go out then. Or you have a fight with your spouse. This is it. I'm going to call the lawyer, blah, blah, blah. Why? the sun's going to come out. Hang in there. Have a good conversation. I mean, even if you do end up separate on a good note, not a bad note. And so I find that if you can run long distance, it means you are going to override the automatic impulse to quit many, many, many times. And then when you're in business and you think, I don't want to invest any more in this. Why? Why don't I invest a little bit more and see a little more time, a little more money, whatever, and see how it goes? Why don't I run around the corner and see what's there? Why don't I go a little deeper in this relationship and actually have those hard conversations that I'm not having? And maybe if I actually had these hard conversations, I'd find out there's way more available in this relationship than I ever knew, because I'm not giving that person a chance to be themselves.
Absolutely.
That all comes back to the times that you wanted to stop running. You thought, no, I'll give it a chance. I'll keep going. And then suddenly you're at the end of a race, you've got a medal around your neck. You've made some new friends. You feel great. And the next time you remember that time that you kept going. Right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Also, I feel like in the mental toughness of the physicality of things, you gain mental toughness for other things in life.
Yep.
And I don't know where I heard this. I think it might have been, I don't know, maybe Tim Ferriss or David Goggins. I don't know who said it, but to have, maybe it was a landmark thing. I don't know. To have peace of mind, you need peace of body. And I try to ignore it sometimes when I don't want to work out.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to go run. But the best, not the best times of my life, but the best moments or long-term periods is always when I'm exercising or doing it consistently. And it's chemical. It's like endorphins and all these things. And we're not designed to be sedentary and just sitting on chairs in front of computers for 60 years and then retire. You know, I always say that I retired when I was 29.
Yeah, 100%. There's a guy that you may know, name Scott Hamill, really good guy down in Toronto. He's a magician, and he also does a bit of coaching. But his website is called, I think it's called paidtobreathe.ca. And he said, I'm paid to breathe because I'd be doing this other stuff anyway. So the fact that I get paid for it, it's like getting paid to breathe because I do it anyway. And I think that's really great. If like I would be traveling anyway, I would be coaching anyway, I'd be doing these things anyway. So if you can get, and again, it's not for everyone that they can always do that. Yeah. You know, I joke that my amalgam of all my coaching clients, if I put them all into one stereotype, it would be the 40-year-old accountant from Ohio who really wished he'd been a pro surfer. And he calls me, and what he thinks he's calling me to do is to teach him how to be a pro surfer at 40, right? And what I'm really saying is, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You put a lot of time into this accounting business, right? Let's see what joy you can find there while you start to squeeze a little bit more out of life that surfing would have given you. And maybe you go on a surf trip this year and say, oh yeah, now I feel like that. How do you pay for that surf trip? Oh, with your accounting business, right? So over time, you'll shift to doing much more of what you love and realizing that thing that you used to see as the hurdle is actually the engine for that. So Absolutely. I just want to bring that back because otherwise people say, dude, not everyone can do exactly what they want all the time. And I get that. If you can, do it. If you can't, again, go back to the very start of the conversation, then embrace the thing that you have to do because it is going to be the thing that's going to allow you to do all kinds of other things, right? Absolutely. It's funny. As someone with ADHD, I drop pins in conversations all the time. And I find I have to come back and pick that pin up and pick that pin up. Yeah. Something that we said earlier was the idea about designing your own life and that otherwise, you know, you're going to put all that same skill and all that same energy and all that same talent into a life that you didn't even want. And you're going to be the president of the bank and think, why this is not where I wanted to go. And I remember the conversation with my folks when I was changing everything. And it's much harder. Like it's easy to have a conversation when you're not good at something, right? Because like, well, it doesn't make any sense to do this. I'm not good at it. You were good at the bank. I was good as a realtor. Yeah. And when you tell people I'm not going to do this anymore this year, but you're good at it. And that's the tricky thing is, and I talked about this a lot last week in our coaching, is that if you don't decide where you're going to put your time and energy, Someone's going to decide it for you. We live in an attention economy where every business, their job is, I'm going to convince you to do what I want you to do, right? And your teachers, well-intentioned, but they all have these ideas about what you should do. And they try and steer you to that. And your parents want you to do this, and they try and steer you to that. And your friends think this is what you should do, and they try and steer you to that. So there are an infinite number of people and companies and forces trying to decide where your life should go. So it's not that if you don't decide, nothing's going to happen. If you don't decide, something's going to happen for sure. And it certainly isn't going to be what you want it to. And so it doesn't mean you should get input from your parents and your friends and your teachers and all that. That's awesome. But don't let any of them make those decisions for you, because if you don't, by default, other people will. And you will almost always be led to where you didn't want to be because it wasn't you making those decisions.
100%, man. 100%. And that's what I knew. And I know this is like story, but I was the golden kid of my family, like everybody's down in Costa Rica or Peru where my family's from. And like, this is Stephan is the senior manager at Scotiabank, which is like a bank also in Latin America, as you know, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm feeling great because they're proud of me and all these things. So now I'm getting different kinds of accolades. When I quit, everybody thought I was a fucking idiot, but now they're this guy had a plan, But I totally agree. We had a discussion the other day as we close this, and I still feel committed to what I said that day, although my family was like, "You're crazy," and we were discussing if what would we do with the money if we won the Ontario, I don't know, the mega
Powerball lottery, whatever it is.
The Powerball, 60 million. Let's call it 60 million. And I said, I would not want to win it. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't take it. And they're like, "You're fucking crazy. You're a liar." Well, and I'm like, listen. First of all, most of the people who win it go broke. It's
5 years later, statistically, they're far less successful and happy than they ever were.
And less happy. And I'm like, then I was like, well, it probably wouldn't happen to me because I studied finance. But then again, sometimes you're so deep into the comfort zone. Oh, I studied finance, it won't happen to me. But you go broke because you're so in your comfort zone. But then, apart from that, I say, I don't think I would take the money. I wouldn't. First of all, I don't play the lottery, but I love my life so much that I feel that those outside, because it will change. I think 60 million is a lot of fucking money.
Sure.
So I don't want that outside force to change my grind, to change my day-to-day, to change these memory. I don't want to outsource a lot of the things that I do, that I enjoy, or the grind of comedy, or building my company, or spending time with my son, or overcoming these difficulties with my wife. And I want to get your input. What would you do with 60 million?
I feel very similar to what you do, in that when you look at lottery marketing, imagine the freedom, right? And imagine is a lot like saying, if only, or I just wish. I just wish I could have this life. You can have that life. It always shows them like laughing with friends or paddling out in the wilderness. Laugh with your friends, paddle in the wilderness. Oh, it shows them an amazing resort in Greece. Then prioritize your life so that you can take your wife on an amazing vacation to Greece. Don't think, if only I won the lottery, I would do these things, because you're not going to win the lottery, right? So first of all, the conversation about what would I have if I did, wonderful hypothetical conversation, but most people don't have that as a hypothetical conversation. They have it as I honestly, in the back of my mind, think I might someday win that. So I'm going to have that conversation so that when I do win it, I know what to do. Right. Yeah. And you're not going to win the lottery.
You're not going.
And if you do, statistically, you're not going to be happy. But that said, I wouldn't change a single thing. Exactly that. I'd find a way to help more people do what I do. More people travel. More people do these things. And
me too.
If anyone thinks that when they win the lottery, they're going to be a different person than they are now, they're wrong. It's going to bring out so much of, and again, not a terrible thing. Some people win the lottery and they're great, but you're going to be the same person now. And the person now who doesn't make things happen because you're waiting to win the lottery is now going to have $6 million and also not make things happen.
Exactly.
Right?
And money just makes you a bigger of who you are.
And it's also going to take away the need and the incentive to actually go out and achieve anything.
Yeah.
And at the end of your life, you'll live this crazy, comfortable life. So years ago, I wrapped up a 45-minute speech with a 45-second summary. And obviously I don't have it memorized, but basically what I said was, do something, anything, just do something. And what if it's hard? Great, it's hard. Easy is a trap. We've been sold this idea that easy is good. More money would make things easier. And I said, they didn't build a statue of Rocky because it was easy. They built a statue of Rocky because it was hard. They don't build statues for lottery winners. And that was actually my quote. They do not build statues for lottery winners because they didn't actually do anything. And at the end of your life, when you look back, it's not going to be, did you have $100 million? It's, did I do anything?
Yeah.
Right. And and the other thing is, people who go and earn that money and have $100 million, what a lot of them do is they then go and donate a lot to the hospital. And you see the this family wing of the hospital, the this family wing of the library, or the this family cultural center, because they've played the game of success, generating success, and they realize this still doesn't mean anything. I want to do something with this.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, the person who wins $60 million in a lottery, they're not thinking, how do I go build a wing at a hospital? Because they're not that person, or they would have earned the money and done it that way. So yeah, if if I win $60 million, I'm not going to say, I'd give it all away. I would find a way to use it to help other people feel the way that I feel and have what I have now without this $1 million.
That's what at the end of the conversation, that I was like, I was like, honestly, I wouldn't change anything that I do. I would still want to go perform. I would still want to go and teach. I would still want to be in my son's life every day. Yeah. I'd still want to be married to my wife. Yeah. And I wouldn't, but after all this discussion, I'd be like, I would help my my parents have a better retirement, or their last 20, 30 years or whatever. I would help my wife's parents have a more comfortable life in Venezuela. I would help pay my mom's debt or whatever, my brother, or give my nephews and nieces a better education or whatever. But me, I wouldn't change a thing. Yeah. And that is usually, in my books, a very good sign. I heard Dana White, the president of the UFC, say like the term "fuck you money," and first of all, like he was like, he's like, don't fucking believe these people who were like, if I get $10,000, bro, if I win $10,000 in the lottery, I'll go to my job tomorrow and say, fuck you, I quit. And he's like, that's the biggest bullshit ever. You're not gonna do it. The fuck you money is like the biggest lie in the world. If you didn't do it right now, you're not going to do it then. And 100%. And I agree in many ways. So the last question of the podcast, this has been great, Johnny. Thank you so much. Every guest gets this question, and it's, if we were to meet a year from now with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in Johnny's life?
Well, we're celebrating the end of your first endurance barefoot run. Clearly, we will have just run 20 miles completely barefoot, and we'll be celebrating that with a bottle of champagne.
Oh my God, let's do it, my friend. Let's do it.
Now I will create one slight bit of wiggle room on that. Is it won't be 2 years to the day, because that would be January. I've done it, but it's not pleasant. We'll do it in June.
I love it. How far away is your home from North York, for example?
So yeah, it's funny. I do that trip a lot because when you live in Minden, but you travel a lot, you fly out of YYZ, right? So I'm back and forth to Toronto all the time. I would be just under 2 hours from here to the airport. So North York. Actually, it's funny. I was in North York a couple of months ago. I got a hernia surgery, and so I was at the Shouldice Clinic in Richmond Hill there, which I know isn't North York proper, but it's nearby.
Nice.
And, I'll tell you, I met some great friends from that area for a run a couple years ago, and I need to remember what it was called. It was like the Magic Forest, and it was somewhere north of Markham. And I'm going to find out where it was. And it was a spring run. And I did do that one barefoot, and there were still like little bits of snow and slush and stuff. And
I would love.
Yeah, so you and I are going to meet at the Magic Forest. I will reach out to my friends to find out where it is, and it will be a shorter drive for you than for me, but it'll still be a compromise.
I would love that, man.
And if you ever do find yourself up this way, everyone says that where they live is God's country. Everyone knows Muskoka because it's a straight shot up 11. And I always say that's the reason that Muskoka boomed before Haliburton did, because to get to Haliburton, you have to explain a couple of turns. But we are sort of halfway between Lindsay and Huntsville. If you're on 35, if you're going to Muskoka, you turn right at Aurelia and wiggle your way east over to Haliburton. So Minden, really, really cool spot. There's 600 named lakes in Haliburton County, and a lot of them are connected by rivers. So the amount of paddling we can do, that's a big part of my life, is stand-up paddling and kayaking.
I think my wife would love to try that too.
Yeah. So yeah, come see us in the summertime. And it's funny, even though my wife sold Bonnie View, we both still go back and bartend there in the summer because it's awesome. So you can come do a paddle, hang out with us in the Bonnie View patio, and it'll be a good day.
Beautiful. Man, this has been great. You're an inspiration.
Thanks,
I love meeting like-minded people. You're incredible vibes, incredible energy. And I want to meet you in person. I want to go run or do paddling, come with my family and embark on this life adventure.
Awesome, brother. Well, you found your stoke. To me, that's really, really important. Be around people who found their stoke, find your stoke and share it. And that's what you're doing. So yeah, absolutely. You are welcome anytime, and I'll come see you too.
Thank you, my friend. Big hug. Pura vida. Y nos vemos pronto. Johnny Waite and Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer Podcast. Ciao, ciao.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.